And welcome back to another episode of the Furnace Remnant. Today we're going to be talking about borders, allegiance, and the kingdom, navigating law and mercy, part one. Before we get started, I just want to say, anybody listening, I'm going to be recording this and not sending it through Riverside this time. The first two episodes, I had done that, but I noticed on one of them in its automatic correction when it detects mistakes, it took something out that I didn't expect. It didn't alter the episode in any kind of way, but I'm kind of worried that maybe some of this content that it deems, I don't know, not acceptable will be taken out. And, you know, I'm not going to be saying anything that's not acceptable, but as we see with the surveillance of things and um, the censoring of things nowadays, it's real easy to say something that they deem unacceptable. So let's get into it, and we'll we'll start here again. I said this is part one. I ended up coming up with four different sections of this, and just decided to split them up into two parts. So let's get into part one. In a world where loyalty is constantly tested, loyalty to our country, our culture, even to truth itself, the Bible gives us guidance that is both ancient and timeless. In Israel, allegiance meant more than living within borders. It meant covenant, faithfulness to one God and one law. With Christ, that framework expanded to a kingdom not bound by geography or ancestry. Today on the Furnace Remnant, we'll explore how allegiance has evolved, from the covenant nation of Israel to the modern tension Christians face between obeying earthly laws and extending mercy. How do we honor God, respect the law, and show compassion in a world divided by nations but united under one Lord? Let's find out. Allegiance and belonging in ancient Israel. How the Bible addressed foreigners and citizens. The laws of ancient Israel, as recorded in the Bible, reveal a striking balance between compassion and strict covenantal loyalty. On one hand, Israel was commanded to treat the poor, the vulnerable, and even foreigners with justice and care. On the other, anyone, whether native born or foreigner, who broke the covenant in serious ways faced severe consequences. Equal treatment under the law. The Torah makes it clear that foreigners living in Israel were not to be mistreated or exploited. Exodus 22:21 says, "You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were once sojourners in the land of Egypt." Foreign residents called sojourners were to be granted the same legal protections as Israelites. Leviticus 24:22 says, "You shall have the same rule for the sojourner and for the native, for I am the Lord your God." This meant foreigners were entitled to Sabbath rest, gleanings from the harvest, and equal justice in court. But equality also carried obligations. Sojourners were expected to live under Israel's laws, abstain from idolatry, and participate in the covenant's moral framework. Covenant loyalty and serious offenses. The same law that protected foreigners also bound them to Israel's covenant. Grave sins such as adultery, idolatry, murder, and blasphemy carried capital punishment regardless of whether the offender was native or foreigner. Adultery, both of them shall die. Deuteronomy 22:22. Idolatry, you shall stone that man or woman to death. Deuteronomy 17:5. Blasphemy, the sojourner as well as the native shall be punished. Leviticus 24:16. Israel's justice system was not two-tiered. It extended protection and belonging to foreigners, but demanded full allegiance to God in return. Foreign allegiance as betrayal. In Israel's theocracy, loyalty to another nation or its gods was more than political disloyalty. It was spiritual treason. Alliances with foreign powers such as Egypt or Assyria were condemned as unfaithfulness. Isaiah 31:1. Marriages to foreign spouses who turned Israel's heart toward other gods were forbidden. Deuteronomy 7:3 and 4. Foreigners who wished to live in Israel could not retain allegiance to another nation's gods or rulers. To do so was to undermine Israel's identity as a holy people set apart for the Lord. The biblical principle. The Bible's vision for Israel was clear: one people under one God governed by one law. Foreigners were welcome, but only if they embraced the covenant and pledged allegiance to the Lord. Equality and protection came hand in hand with equality and accountability. In today's world, where questions of immigration, citizenship, and allegiance remain deeply debated, Israel's ancient system provides a thought provoking perspective. Belonging was not defined merely by residence, but by loyalty, by choosing to live under the same law and the same God as the covenant community. Allegiance today, balancing law, mercy, and kingdom citizenship. Now, what does all of this mean for us today? In a world of borders, immigration, and divided allegiances, how should Christians respond when law, compassion, and loyalty collide? It's not a contradiction. It's a tension that Scripture expects us to navigate carefully. There are two God-given spheres at work: the government's role to maintain justice, enforce laws, and protect its citizens. The believer's role is to show mercy, extend hospitality, and embody the heart of God toward individuals. Romans 13 gives the state authority to uphold order. Matthew 25 calls Christians to feed, clothe, and care for the vulnerable. This means we can support lawful immigration while still ministering to undocumented individuals. We can uphold justice without hatred. We can defend borders without hardening our hearts. Just as in ancient Israel, justice and mercy are not enemies. Foreigners were welcome, but they were expected to live under Israel's covenant. Today, Christians are called to uphold the law while also demonstrating Christlike compassion. The principle is timeless. Obedience to earthly authorities and mercy toward individuals are complementary, not contradictory. Believers live between two kingdoms, honoring the laws of their country while pledging ultimate allegiance to Christ, the King of a kingdom without borders. Navigating misunderstandings. Mercy is not lawlessness. Some may hear these words and react: are you saying we should ignore the law? That justice doesn't matter? That Christians must turn a blind eye? Absolutely not. Mercy and grace are never an excuse for chaos or moral compromise. Scripture calls us to a higher standard, not a lower one. Showing compassion does not mean abandoning discernment. Mercy without accountability is not mercy, it is enabling. Grace without wisdom is not grace, it is folly. Hospitality without boundaries is not love, it is neglect. The call is not to dismantle borders or reject lawful authority, but to remember the human face of every law, the heart behind every statute. When you feed the hungry, clothe the naked, or welcome the stranger, you are not undermining justice, you are embodying it. True justice protects the vulnerable, and mercy ensures that enforcement does not crush the innocent. And when navigating the line between justice and grace, we must do as Jesus taught: be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Matthew 10:16. Wisdom equips us to discern rightly and act justly, while gentleness ensures our actions are tempered by mercy and love. Christ calls us to balance vigilance with compassion, holding the tension without tipping into harshness or naivety. In practice, this means upholding legal systems and supporting policies that secure borders while ministering to those in need. Speaking truth to power without dehumanizing the individual. The tension is real, and Scripture never promises it will be easy, but Christians are called to navigate it with courage, faith, and a steadfast commitment to the kingdom. Obedience to earthly law and fidelity to God's mercy are not enemies, they are two sides of the same coin. How we balance them reveals not just our citizenship on earth, but our allegiance in heaven. Now, a personal struggle and ongoing learning. I'll be honest, this balance between justice, mercy, and kingdom allegiance is not something I have mastered. Even as I write these words, I am learning how to apply them in real life. There are moments when it's easier to lean on fear, to hide behind rules, or to judge quickly. There are moments when mercy feels inconvenient, grace feels costly, and patience feels impossible. But Scripture calls us not to perfection on our own, but to faithful effort under God's guidance. Every act of compassion, Every choice to uphold justice without hardening my heart is a step toward living out the tension Christ models. I share this not as a blueprint I have perfected, but as a journey I am still walking, one that invites humility, prayer, and constant reflection. If we think we have it all figured out, we risk forgetting that our ultimate allegiance is to Christ, and our growth in mercy, justice, and faithfulness is a lifelong process. In the next episode, I will be getting more into, let me check my notes here. I will be getting more into things like foreign overrun as a biblical sign of judgment. That's the name of one of the sections. And another one is called God's design for borders and walls. So we will be getting into that one on the next episode. Just thought I'd give you a little bit of what is going to be happening in part 2. I know that this is not really a comprehensive episode, even if it is just part 1 on what we talked about. This whole thing with it not being comprehensive is not just the fact that, given my human flaws, I'm not able to cover everything or understand everything. It's also a chance for the listener to look and search the scriptures and search their hearts in prayer with God, to ask God to search their heart rather. And I would really be interested in knowing what that looks like for everybody. I would like to know how God has spoken to you on such issues, and where there seems to be this contradiction, how He has helped you navigate through that. Because again, I'm not just here giving episodes where I know everything and I'm trying to quote unquote teach people. This is all about my learning as well. And I pray that it can be for all of us, for all of my listeners as well. With that being said, I will bring this episode to a close. It is my hope that you will tune in to part 2 of Borders, Allegiance, and the Kingdom. Until next time.